Severe weather warnings across Queensland, heavy rain, strong winds, flash flooding possible. That S what we're looking at over the next 72 hours as a developing tropical low in the Coral Sea interacts with an intense monsoon trough across the state S north. I've examined the latest from the Bureau of Meteorology, cross-referenced the Access model with the European and GFS forecasts, and what we're seeing is a significant weather setup that deserves your attention. Not catastrophic, but serious enough that you need to know what S coming your way. Right now, conditions across Queensland are setting the stage for what S about to unfold. Brisbane S been sitting at 34 degrees with oppressive humidity. That sticky, uncomfortable air mass has been parked over southeast Queensland all week. Further north, Townsville hit 35 degrees, overcast skies, humidity making it hard to breathe. Up in Cairns, people are dealing with that typical wet season build-up weather. Hot, humid, storms popping up in the afternoon. Out west at Mount Carbine, it's been absolutely brutal. 34 degrees at 11 this morning with 80% humidity. Minimum overnight was 27 degrees. That's the kind of heat where you can get anything done. And they re-dealing with swarms of biting black flies on top of it. Compare that to what S happening down south. New South Wales saw severe thunderstorms develop yesterday. 8-centimetre hail near Canberra, supercells near Dubbo, wind gusts hit 109 kilometres per hour along the Illawarra coast. That system S now moved offshore, but it shows you the kind of atmospheric energy we're reworking with across eastern Australia. So let us break down exactly what's happening meteorologically, then we'll get into the regional impacts and what you need to do about it. The Coral Sea tropical low, this is the key player. Currently sitting about 500 kilometres northeast of Cairns. It's not a cyclone yet, and the models suggest it probably one to develop into one, but that doesn't mean it's not significant. This low is tapping into extremely warm sea surface temperatures, pulling moisture up from the equatorial regions, and it's about to interact with a monsoon trough that has been sitting across far north Queensland for the past week. The Access model, which is the Bureau S primary forecast tool, shows this low drifting westward over the next 48 hours. Not quickly, but steadily. As it does that, it is going to enhance rainfall across a broad area from Cooktown down through Townsville, across the Herbert and Burdekin catchments, and into the Whitsundays. The European model agrees on the broad pattern, but has the low position slightly further north. That would shift the heaviest rainfall band a bit. The GFS is somewhere in between, so there is some uncertainty about exactly where the heaviest falls will be, but all three models agree on significant rainfall totals. We're re-looking at widespread falls of 100 to 200 millimetres across coastal and adjacent inland areas between Cooktown and Mackay. Some areas, particularly around Townsville and the northern tablelands, could see isolated totals exceeding 300 millimetres. That's a serious amount of rain in a short period. Now, many of you remember the 2011 Queensland floods. Brisbane underwater, Toowoomba devastated, 78 millimetres fell in 36 minutes in Toowoomba on that January 10th. The Brisbane River peaked at 4.6 metres. This system, 1T, reached those catastrophic levels. We were not looking at that kind of event, but it's still significant enough to cause flooding, particularly in catchments that are already saturated from recent rainfall. The other factor we need to consider is wind. The tropical low will generate wind gusts up to 80 kilometres per hour along exposed coastal areas. That is about 43 knots for those on the water, not cyclone strength winds, but strong enough to bring down trees, damage loose structures, and create hazardous marine conditions. The Bureau has issued severe weather warnings for heavy rainfall and damaging winds across most of the Queensland coast from Cape York down to about Mackay. Flood watches are current for multiple catchments, including the Daintree, Mossman, Barron, Mulgrave, Russell, Johnstone, Tully, Murray, Herbert, Black, Ross, Horton, Burdekin, and Don Rivers. That's a lot of river systems on alert. Let's break this down by region so you know exactly what to expect where you are. Far north Queensland from Cape York down to Cairns. You're first in line for this system. Rain has already started increasing across the Cape and will continue through tonight and into tomorrow. The low will be closest to you tomorrow afternoon and evening. That S when you will see the heaviest falls. Expect 150 to 250 millimetres across the coastal strip and adjacent ranges. Isolated areas could see 300 millimetres. The Daintree and Mossman rivers will respond quickly. If you are in low-lying areas along these systems, you need to be monitoring river levels closely. Flash flooding is possible, particularly this afternoon and tonight. The Bureau S Flood Warning Service will issue updates as the situation develops, but Dante, wait for a warning to start preparing. Cairns and the northern tablelands. You've been dealing with that humid, uncomfortable weather all week. This system will bring relief from the heat, but at the cost of heavy rainfall. The Barron catchment is already wet from recent falls. Additional heavy rain will likely cause minor to moderate flooding. If you on the Atherton tablelands, particularly around Mareeba and Atherton, you are looking at significant rainfall totals. One viewer mentioned feeling very isolated during the lead up to the last cyclone. Mate, I understand that concern. Up there on the tablelands, when the weather turns bad, you can feel cut off quickly. Make sure you've got supplies sorted, check your property drainage, secure anything that could blow around, and keep your phone charged so you can monitor warnings. Townsville and the Herbert region. This is where I am particularly concerned. The models are showing this area copping some of the heaviest rainfall. Townsville could see 200 to 300 millimetres over the next 3 days. The Ross River will rise, the Black River will rise. We re-looking at potential flooding across both catchments. If you are in Townsville, you know what flooding looks like there. The low-lying areas around the river flood relatively easily. The Belgium Gardens, Idalia, parts of the CBD near the creek, these areas are vulnerable. If you in a flood-prone location, now is the time to prepare, not when the water is already rising. The Herbert catchment is massive and responds to heavy rainfall across a wide area. Ingham and surrounding communities need to be watching this closely. Stock up on essentials before the heavy rain sets in. If you've got livestock, make sure they in paddocks with higher ground available. The Burdekin region. This is interesting from a hydrological perspective. The Burdekin is one of Queensland's largest river systems. It takes a lot of rain to get it flooding, but when it does, it affects huge areas. Current forecasts suggest minor to moderate flooding is possible, particularly if the heaviest rainfall sets up over the upper catchment. If you around Charters Towers, the upper Burdekin, you are going to see significant rain. 150 to 250 millimetres likely. That water will flow into the Burdekin Dam, which is currently sitting at about 46% capacity. One viewer mentioned wanting the dam to fill for barramundi fishing. Mate, you'll get some water in there, but be careful what you wish for. Too much too quickly causes its own problems. Mackay and the Whitsundays, you are on the southern edge of this system. Rainfall totals will be lower than further north, but still significant. 100 to 150 millimetres likely. The Pioneer River could see minor flooding. Coastal areas will cop the strongest winds, particularly around the Whitsunday Islands, Gladstone and central Queensland. You've already had your fair share of rainfall, 185 millimetres over the past 4 days in southern Gladstone. The Callide River went to flood warning and has now dropped back. The sun's finally coming out down there, which is good news. This new system will bring you some more rain, but nothing like what the north is getting. 50 to 100 millimetres possible, mainly tomorrow and Thursday. Southeast Queensland, Brisbane, the Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast. You're largely missing out on this one. The heaviest rainfall will stay well to the north. You might see some showers and thunderstorms as the broader pattern affects the state, but we're not looking at significant totals. That said, there's been some commentary about southeast Queensland needing rain. The dams are getting lower, conditions have been dry. This system, to solve that problem, you'll need to wait for a different pattern to bring you decent rainfall. Now let's talk about the broader pattern and what happens after this system moves through. The monsoon trough across northern Australia is active and will remain so for at least the next week to 10 days. This tropical low in the Coral Sea is just one feature within that broader pattern. Behind it, conditions across the Gulf of Carpentaria and the top end will continue producing heavy rainfall and isolated severe thunderstorms. Darwin S sitting at 35 degrees with high humidity. The wet season build-up is well underway. Over the next week, the top end will see daily storms, heavy rainfall and typical wet season conditions. If you in the Northern Territory, you know the drill. Roads will flood, access will be cut in remote areas, the humidity will be relentless. Standard wet season stuff, but worth being aware of. The question everyone's asking is whether another system will develop. And the honest answer is we don't know yet. The Coral Sea remains very warm, sea surface temperatures are running above average, the atmospheric conditions support tropical development, so yes, there is potential for more systems to develop over the next few weeks. Early February is being flagged as a period to watch. The long-range models And I want to stress these are long range and inherently uncertain, are showing another potential tropical low developing in the Coral Sea around the first week of February. Whether that develops into anything significant, whether it affects the coast, it is too early to say. But it's something to keep an eye on. Some have raised concerns about solar activity and forecasting uncertainty around the 18th of the month. Look, solar activity does influence weather patterns, particularly in the upper atmosphere, but modern forecasting accounts for these factors. The Bureau uses ensemble forecasting, which runs multiple model scenarios to capture uncertainty. Trust the official forecasts from the Bureau of Meteorology. They're really good at what they do. Now let's talk about what you need to do. Practical steps based on where you are and what S coming. If you are in the direct path of this system, far north Queensland through to central Queensland, here is what you should be doing today. Stock up on essentials. Not panic buying, just sensible preparation. Make sure you've got enough food, water, medications for 3 to 5 days. If the roads flood and you can get to town, you need to be self-sufficient. Bread, milk, tinned food, batteries for torches, basic stuff, but do it before the shops get busy. Secure your property. Anything that can blow around in 80 km/h winds needs to be tied down or brought inside. Outdoor furniture, trampolines, loose sheets of iron, tools. I've seen trampolines end up 3 properties away after strong wind events. Don't to be that person. Check your drainage. Make sure your gutters are clear. Check that stormwater drains around your property aren't blocked. If heavy rain hits and your drainage is blocked, water will find somewhere else to go, usually into your house or shed. If you're in a flood-prone area, know your evacuation route. Don't wait until water's across the road to figure out where you are going. Have a plan. Talk to your family about it. Know where you'll go if you need to leave. And if authorities issue an evacuation order, follow it. Don to be a hero. For those with livestock, make sure they have access to higher ground. Cattle and horses will naturally move to high ground when floods come, but they need somewhere to go. Check your fences, make sure gates are working. In a flood, you might need to open gates to let stock move to safety. If you're recamping or caravanning in North Queensland, seriously consider relocating to solid shelter. A caravan in 80 km/h winds is not where you want to be. A tent even less so. One bloke mentioned being homeless in Cairns, living in a 3-man tent, wondering if he should have got insurance on it. Mate, I hope you're re-joking, but if you are not, find solid shelter for the next few days. Community centres, evacuation centres, mates with houses, Don to try to ride this out in a tent. Monitor official warnings. The Bureau of Meteorology website is your primary source. Download the BOM weather app if you haven't already. It gives you warnings specific to your location. The ABC emergency broadcast will also carry updates. Don T, rely on social media for critical safety information. Get it from official sources. If you're re-driving, be aware that roads will flood. The official advice is simple. If it's flooded, forget it. Every year people drown trying to drive through floodwater. You cannot tell how deep it is. You cannot tell if the road S still there underneath. The current is stronger than you think. Your vehicle is not as capable as you think. Just don't do it. For those south of the impact zone, you are in a good position to help if needed. Keep an eye on the news. If communities get cut off, if there is calls for assistance, that S, when those of you in unaffected areas can step up. Donations, supplies, whatever S needed. Queenslanders are good at that. We saw it in 2011. We'll see it again if needed. Now, the humidity. Multiple people have mentioned how oppressive it's been. Townsville, Mount Carbine, right across North Queensland, the humidity has been next level. Floors sweating, can't sleep, air conditioning struggling. That is the pre-storm environment. All that moisture in the atmosphere, warm temperatures, no relief. The good news is this system will bring some relief, at least temporarily. Once the rain moves through and the wind shifts, you will get a change. It won't be dramatic. We're not talking about a cool southerly buster or anything, but the air will feel less oppressive. The bad news is that it's the wet season. This pattern will repeat. Hot and humid. Storms, brief relief, then back to hot and humid. If you're struggling with the humidity, few practical tips. Keep air moving. Fans help even when it's hot. Open the house up overnight when temperatures drop slightly. Close it up during the day. Stay hydrated. The heat and humidity will dehydrate you faster than you realise. Check on elderly neighbours and mates. They more vulnerable to heat stress. The temperature whiplash some areas have been experiencing. 30 degrees one day, 18 the next, then back up again. People have been crook for weeks. Flu, headaches, sinus problems. That's the effect of rapid temperature changes on the body. Unfortunately, that pattern will continue across eastern Australia as frontal systems move through the southern states while tropical air dominates the north. Speaking of the southern states, let's quickly touch on what is happening down there because it's a completely different weather pattern. Tasmania saw -2 degrees overnight in some areas, frost across the northern suburbs of Hobart. That cold air mass is well established across the south. Victoria, South Australia, southern New South Wales, you're all under the influence of cooler air from the Southern Ocean. Melbourne hit 32 degrees yesterday, then dropped to 20 degrees today with a cool change. That's classic spring weather down south. Warm northerlies ahead of a front, then a sharp southerly change. Sydney S waiting for decent rain. The catchments need it. But this Queensland system, one to help you. You'll need a different pattern. An East Coast low would do it, but there's none on the horizon in the short term. The contrast across Australia right now is massive. Darwin at 35 degrees and humid. Hobart at 15, struggling with frost. Brisbane at 34 and sticky. Melbourne at 20 with a cool breeze. That spread will shift over the coming weeks as summer progresses, but for now we're re-seeing the full range of Australian weather on display. For those interested in the technical side, let me explain what is creating this tropical low and why it is behaving the way it is. Sea surface temperatures in the Coral Sea are currently running 1 to 2 degrees above average. That might not sound like much, but in tropical meteorology it is significant. Warmer water means more energy available for tropical systems. It means higher evaporation rates, more moisture in the atmosphere, greater potential for development. The monsoon trough is essentially a zone where trade winds from the northern and southern hemispheres converge. It creates an area of low pressure, rising air and heavy rainfall. When you get a tropical low embedded within that trough, it can tap into that broader moisture source and intensify. The reason this particular low probably won't develop into a cyclone is the wind shear. There's moderate to strong wind shear across the region, which disrupts the organisation of the system. For a tropical cyclone to form, you need low wind shear so the system can develop a central core and organised structure. The current shear environment doesn't support that. However, for heavy rainfall, you don't need a cyclone. This low is perfectly capable of producing flooding rains without ever becoming a cyclone. In fact, some of the worst flooding events in Queensland history have come from tropical lows, not cyclones. The steering currents, the upper level winds that push weather systems around, are weak. That's why the low is moving slowly westward. Slow-moving systems are problematic because they dump rain in the same area for extended periods. If this low stalls near the coast, rainfall totals will increase significantly. The jet stream, that ribbon of fast-moving air in the upper atmosphere, is currently positioned well south of Queensland. It is affecting southern Australia, bringing frontal systems through Victoria and Tasmania. But it is not interacting with this tropical system. If the jet were closer, it could either enhance the low or shear it apart. Given the current pattern, it is doing neither. Looking at historical comparisons, this setup is similar to several past events. Not identical, but similar. The 2019 Townsville floods, late January into early February, a monsoon trough sat across North Queensland for weeks. Multiple tropical lows developed and moved through. Townsville copped over a metre of rain in a week. The city flooded extensively. This system isn't forecast to reach that level, but it's the same type of pattern. Monsoon trough, slow-moving tropical low, warm Coral Sea, weak steering currents. All the ingredients are there for significant rainfall. The 1998 Far North Queensland floods, another monsoon trough event, widespread falls over 300 millimetres, multiple catchments flooded simultaneously, infrastructure damaged, communities isolated for weeks. The key difference is we're much better at forecasting these events now. In 98, the warning time was shorter. The model resolution was coarser. Now, the Bureau can see these systems developing days in advance and provide detailed forecasts. That's why you're hearing about this system now before it's even close to the coast. Use that warning time wisely. For those who've been through these events before, you know what to expect. You remember the rain, the flooding, the isolation, the cleanup. For those who haven't, listen to the people who have. Ask your neighbours, your mates who've lived in the area longer. They've got experience that's worth more than any forecast. The cleanup after heavy rainfall and flooding takes weeks, sometimes months. Roads get damaged. Bridges wash out, properties get flooded, crops get destroyed. It's not just the event itself, it is the aftermath. Be prepared for disruption that extends well beyond the rainfall period. One more thing worth mentioning is the increased risk of disease after flooding. Mosquitoes breed in standing water. If you've got water lying around your property after the rain, drain it. Tip out containers. Anything that can hold water becomes a mosquito breeding ground. Ross River virus and dengue are both present in North Queensland. Protect yourself. So to summarise, because I know that S been a lot of information, a tropical low in the Coral Sea is moving westward toward the Queensland coast. It will bring heavy rainfall, strong winds and flooding to areas between Cooktown and Mackay over the next 72 hours. Widespread falls of 100 to 200 millimetres. Isolated totals over 300 millimetres possible. Wind gusts to 80 kilometres per hour along the coast. The Bureau has issued severe weather warnings and flood watches. Monitor those warnings. Prepare now, not when the rain's already falling. Stock up on essentials. Secure your property. Know your evacuation route if you are in a flood-prone area. If it's flooded, forget it. Don't drive through flood water. This is a significant weather event, but not catastrophic. You've seen worse. But don't underestimate it either. Take it seriously. Be prepared. Look after your mates and neighbours. I'll be monitoring this system closely and will provide updates as the situation develops. The Bureau will issue regular warnings and forecasts. Stay informed.